Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are on episode 47. We have a fantastic one for you today. It's on values. But before we hop in, I just wanted to say hi to Jamie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Paige. How are you? Good to be here.
Always good to do this. I always feel so energetic after we're done here. So let's go ahead and get into this. Today, we have a special episode on values, and let me explain why we are talking about it. Values are what drive our decision-making process, and it helps us to make decisions that align with who we want to be. They tell us what is important and how we should behave in the world. Unfortunately, when our values are overcome by the power of addictive behaviors, the conflict can lead to relapse or worsen a constant struggle with sobriety. So, taking a deep dive on the topic of values is well worth our time. For those that are listening, as we go along and we ask questions, we want you to answer those questions, not just Jamie and I, but answer them for yourself. And if you ever want to share your thoughts, we would love to hear what you have to
Yes.
say about that. But so starting out, it begs the question, have you been able to see how values are affected by being deep in the addiction? For me, my values definitely are affected by my addiction. Who wants to be the girl eating a donut out of the trash can? We know that when we're in the bonds of addiction and in pain, we can go to extremes to get a fix. We do things that we would not normally ever even consider. But when that addiction, those cravings rear its ugly head, everything seems like a good idea at the time. So,
Exactly.
for example, who would work a wedding reception to make sure you can get a fourth piece of cake without being noticed and make sure you don't care that you're leaving your date at the table by himself? Who would only focus on food at a family gathering versus being interested in your loved ones? Someone who's deep in the addiction, whose value system has been hijacked. That's who. Jamie, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, personal values and that they absolutely just changed my behavior and really gave me a roadmap for me to align to. And that when my addictive behaviors or my responses to powerful foods, processed foods, really were all consuming for me. Having a value system that I could align to really helped me. Values represent what we view as most meaningful in our lives. When we live in accordance with them, our values influence our priorities, our thinking, our choices, our decision making, and our actions. What do you consider to be your top three values, Paige?
So this is hard for me to narrow it down, I guess I should say, and you're a lot better than this. So I can't at this. I can't wait to hear your answer. But for me, integrity by living an honorable, honest life, and I measure that by what I'm doing when no one is looking. That's what I think of integrity. Relationships are high priority for me, specifically with God and my family, and a strong work ethic. And I measure that by trying to give 110% in everything that I do. That really aligns. It's a reflection of who I want to be thought of when people see my work, that I really put my whole heart into it because it's important to me to do a good job.
Yeah, agreed. My values are discipline, service, abundance, gratitude, and integrity. And for me, it's hard to stop at a top three because those are the five that I really live close with every day and align to every day. And I'm really grateful that I can align to those because they give me again a way for me to have a compass back to what I know, how I want to live.
Yeah. When we can identify our values, I think it's so if you have not made a values list, we do encourage that
Mm-hmm.
for reasons that we're going to be talking about today. So once you have your values list and you can identify your values, then these personal values can provide an internal compass that points the way to what an individual identifies as positive, healthy, beneficial, valuable, useful, desirable, and constructive. For most people, life is generally more content and satisfying when they can identify their values and respect them through choices and actions that honor them. In this way, the degree to which your behavior is consistent with your values is a measure of your integrity. So, have you noticed that you are more in tune with that internal compass the longer that you are in recovery? Or maybe I should say it this way: do you have an easier access to that internal compass? Can you tap directly into it more clearly when we're working on recovery? I think I can tap into it, that internal compass, much more when we have the substance out of our system. Otherwise, it's our internal channels start misfiring and they send these confusing messages that exemplify backwards thinking, and we do things we would not normally do, such as eating the donut out of the trash. That's a misfiring somewhere. If I were, never had ever tasted a bite of sugar in my life and didn't fight with that weakness, would I ever be in the trash digging a donut? I mean, I just wouldn't. So, yeah, I think being in recovery really plays a huge impact on our values. It helps us. It's just a helper, a nice helper. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Uh, my values have given me the ability to get myself out of some really sticky situations in recovery, and just in life in general. When I ask myself how I want to show up in a situation, especially things that I don't feel like doing, right? I remind myself of my values, and I get on board.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think as our addictive behaviors progress, and of course we know that addictive behaviors progress, most people drift further and further away from their most deeply held values. They find themselves being people they never thought they would be and don't want to be, living lives they never thought they would live, doing things they never thought they would do. Can you see your food addiction becoming progressive, um, and that it was sort of altering you, Paige?
Yeah, for me, those sugar binges were definitely not getting better. And this is the irony. All I ever wanted to do in life was help people with diet and nutrition. So
Mhm.
here I am, this person who's living this model life of health about 28 days out of the month. Uh, and then I am white knuckling, which of those 28 days I'm white knuckling my way through. Then
Mhm.
I'd fall off the cliff 1 or 2 days a month. And the level of frustration and confusion over why this was happening, I literally all consuming. It was driving me crazy, thinking, I mean, I must just have this willpower problem. And the problem is I couldn't get it figured out. I couldn't get it under control until I started in recovery, and I no longer felt like I was this huge fraud, which now I'm much more in line with my values. And ironically, those 1 or 2 days a month deeply, deeply affected me. Those other 28 days, it was the darkness I could not get out of my soul. And it was just a waiting game. When's it
Yeah.
going to come back? When's it going to, I mean, it was always there simmering below the surface of will I,
Mhm.
won't I, can I make it till lunch? Can I make it till dinner? Can I make it after dinner till I go to bed? Okay, I made it through another day. It's exhausting, exhausting. So constant battle all the time. But yeah, even on the clean days, it was just simmering below the surface and waiting to rear its ugly head. And I just felt totally powerless, like a victim just waiting for it to come and get me. The boogeyman is going to come and get me again.
Right, right.
What about you?
Uh, well, I've talked a lot, here about how I tried to hold on, um, that all the years that I just didn't care, and I threw it all to the wind, so to speak.
Mhm.
So I think that for me, I would have days, I could string days together where I was free from the obsession of wanting
Mhm.
to eat or using food as a solution to life. But inevitably, life throws me another curveball, and I'm back in my solution to life, which was food. Um, life on life's terms, as it were. So I feel like now I have a much deeper understanding of how food can be used to boost my health and well-being, what foods I need to align to, what foods I need to stay away from. And I really try to to stay focused on the food that I know is going to really be freedom for me when I eat it. It's not
Mhm.
going to stay with me. It's not going to give me cravings. It's not going to make me want to eat more of it over time or over the next few hours. It's just going to be nourishment, and I move on.
I love what you just said about I eat the foods that give me freedom.
Mhm.
Huge, huge statement because if we could probably separate all foods into two categories, foods that give us freedom and foods that take us away from freedom.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really that simple, isn't it?
it
Huge.
is. It
I love
is.
that point. So when what you do and how you behave goes against your values, it causes discontent, regret, and unhappiness. For many people, this is a source of tremendous guilt and shame. As distressing and intense as the pain caused by acting in ways that violate your values can be, this pain can also be positive. It can provide motivation to change. And I would love for any of you listening that are willing to share what has motivated you to make changes in your life. For me, I was always searching, no matter I go, you can't name a diet program I wasn't on because I'd hear about something new, it's the squirrel, and then, you're off on some new tangent, but I was always searching, thinking, well, that must be the answer. They said on the infomercial it was that must be true. I'll try that too. It's desperation, right? You're just reacting. You're just so desperate to find a way out. So, those free falling sugar binge kept me on the hunt to get the sugar drive out of my system. So in a way, yes, it was motivating for me, the binges, because I kept searching for answers, but I just did not want to be controlled by that drug.
Right.
Those episodes, they were terrifying and beyond painfully, mentally excruciating, emotionally, physically, in every way, just misery. It was trauma each time it happened. And literally, when I say I had zero control, it was a total free fall. I just can't explain the horror of not knowing when it was going to be over. And here's the biggest irony of the whole thing. It's not like it was even enjoyable, even though this was my drug of choice.
Yeah.
It's what I fought off tooth and nail, but then when I finally got to have it, I couldn't even enjoy it because it turned and was being used as a weapon to destroy me. Do you see the irony? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Mhm.
It's my drug of choice, but I've never been able to enjoy it ever. You can't have one bite and enjoy it because you're terrified that it's going to lead to 1,000 more. So moderation for
Yeah.
me is,
Agreed.
you can't moderate immoderatable substances.
Right. And it's about the substances. It really is. It's about these foods. So many of our foods are chemically altered,
Right.
chemically created, not even altered. They're chemically created
Right.
to incite an addictive response in anyone.
Right.
I anyone or anything. I don't know how I get down these rabbit holes, but I do. And I found this reel somewhere on some social media channel about this woman who has like sort of not exotic, but animals that in her house as pets that people don't have in
Right.
houses. She's domesticated a beaver, and this beaver is in her house, and she named it Fran, I think. I mean, I don't know, maybe this is some wildly popular YouTube thing that I just discovered. But anyway, this little animal is like in her cupboard all the time, in her pantry all the time. Like she has these reels of her discovering this animal in her pantry, trying to get into the processed foods.
Oh, interesting.
And she said, "Oh, Fran just loves these Ritz crackers." And she tries. Fran's got this beaver has this Ritz cracker sleeve in its little claws, and he will not, or she will not give it to the owner so that the owner could open it up. Like the beaver just rips into this sleeve of crackers. And I'm just like, that's it. Like, there is an animal not in its natural environment, of course, but of course it's choosing these highly
Right.
palatable processed foods and acting like a maniac
Right.
trying to get into this food. It's just, there it is. It's just textbook.
I have to tell my nut story, right? About the squirrels, my husband feeding the squirrels.
Oh, yes.
So, my husband sits by a large sliding glass door. That's his kind of main station there in the kitchen. And we have a lot of squirrels in our backyards, and he does enjoy, I mean, it's fun to watch them scamper around, but as winter's coming on, he's like, oh, I'm just going to feed the squirrels these nuts. Of course, he's got like maple covered pecans and things like that. So he's throwing a few of those things out there. What do you know? The squirrels keep coming back.
Mhm.
And so now he's just throwing peanuts out there. And I happened to walk by the other day, and one of those squirrels were sitting up just chowing down on those peanuts he had sprinkled on the deck. And I looked at that squirrel and I thought, that squirrel's getting fat. I swear that squirrel is fatter than it ever was before, but
Yeah. Highly palatable foods, highly
they
palatable
yeah,
foods available in the environment.
a lot
It-
easier to get to, right? Those pre-cracked shells,
Mhm.
those acorns. Nobody
Exactly.
wants those.
Exactly. Too much work. Too much work. Too much work. So why we examine the topic of value so deeply is because we want to have hope for our future.
Yeah.
Change is possible. We all want growth and we all want happiness. When people can connect the dots with regard to how their values and personal goals are being undermined by the bonds of addictive response, then we frequently have to look at our readiness to do something different. When our actions are in alignment with our values, we just feel better. We feel better. We do better. And, the addictive foods will tell us the only way to feel better is by consuming them, right?
Right.
That's the pull of the chemicals. That's the pull of the hit of dopamine in our system, the way that we chemically react to the hyperpalatable foods. And it's actually the opposite, right? This is a lie that we will feel better using these foods. It only makes us feel worse. It's almost impossible to feel good about ourselves and our future when we're deep in processed food. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I do think that's fair. I mean, it's a hard statement, right? But I think it's fair because you are in constant terror of when this is going to rear its ugly head. Were you in constant worry about when this is going to flare up again, or is that just me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, once I understood what I was dealing with, I was, and that had a negative effect on me for a while. I had to really understand that it was not this like scary thing that was always looming in the corner. It was something I needed to understand better, and it was also a way for me to look at the food as addictive, and I was responding exactly the way that I was supposed to respond to addictive substances.
So true. Yeah, that my point is it just takes up so much time and mental energy and bandwidth. It's just like a woodpecker in there that all the time. You've heard me say it's just this frenetic energy always spinning around in your noodle upstairs. So these cravings are extremely painful. I don't think anybody would argue that. It's an itch in the brain you just can't scratch, but it is torture. And by the way, I really don't think I'm being dramatic when I go into all these little tirades. It's just that level of discomfort. For me, it was just total preoccupation and just constant agony. I don't, it's low level agony all the time.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Definitely, absolutely. And I look at it was just distracting. It was taking me out of life. I didn't know it as agony at the time. I just knew it. It was my
Normal.
normal. It was my normal. I didn't realize how out of life I was because I was always thinking about food.
Yeah.
And
Beautifully.
really what I was always thinking about was how can I use this food or food like substance to distract me from pain. I was always sort of walking around in pain. And I don't mean physical, it might have been physical pain, but usually for me it was emotional or mental
Mhm.
anguish, and I was looking for the solution to the pain to be processed food.
Well, that's what we were watching this video in our recovery group by Gabor Mate the other day, and he was describing addiction as people just trying to get temporary relief
Right.
from pain, emotional pain, regardless of the consequences.
Agreed.
Yeah, just always searching to get out of pain.
So what do you do to live in your authentic self in a way that allows you to align to your values?
Say that again.
What do you do to live in your authentic self in a way that you align to your values? Like, how do you align to your values?
For me, this sounds so simplistic. I just, it has to be about the food. It's just always about the food and
What kind of food?
oh, foods that were designed to make me want to eat more of them.
But does that answer the question? So the question is, how do you align to your values, essentially?
And I'm telling you, I don't have access to that if I'm deep in the middle of a sugar binge.
Right.
It's
Got it.
all bets are off.
Yeah.
So I have got to, it's what you just said earlier. I have to eat foods that allow me freedom. That I'm talking about
Yeah.
mental freedom.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yes.
I have to stay in mental clarity in order. It's pretty tough if you're not in mental clarity. We know that in recovery, what people consider important shifts.
Yeah.
And as a result, when people move from active addiction to recovery, they always experience some changes in their values. That's kind of what we were just talking about.
So
So these
true.
long-standing values that people have ignored or let slide during their addiction become a priority,
Mhm.
while some newer values may also begin to assume importance. So recovery provides the opportunity to identify and establish these new healthy priorities and revive the personal qualities that have always been important to us,
Mhm.
but were buried by substance abuse. Did you see a dramatic shift or change when you started in recovery, or was it like a slow process for you?
No, it was a slow process for me, for sure. Because again, I thought it was all about weight, and if weight was if my weight was different, then I'd be different. But
Mhm.
there I was 200 pounds lighter, and I was still in a lot of pain and didn't understand. And I was starting to grasp at things outside of food. I was starting to grasp at things outside of food. So just because the food was aligned to my values, it didn't mean that the pain wasn't still there. So
Mhm.
I had to dive deep into some of the true healing. Then we see this all the time. You know, I spend a lot of time in recovery rooms that have a lot of folks that are in alcoholic recovery, or 12-step groups for alcoholism or drug addiction. And they'll come in and they'll have many years of sobriety, but their words, they'll talk about being wound really tight still, and they'll come into, you know, a family of alcoholics recovery group, you know, like an Al-Anon, and they'll try to understand their dependency and codependency issues. They'll try to look at how they're using people and trying to control people and life to suit their needs instead of using alcohol. But many alcoholics transfer their addiction to alcohol onto food.
Mhm.
So they use food to numb pain, and alcohol is, it's almost easier, right, to avoid because it's
Mhm.
not quite as readily available as all the processed foods are, and
Mhm.
it's not quite as socially acceptable, and certainly can be very dangerous if overconsumed.
Yeah.
You know, immediately dangerous if overconsumed.
Yeah, great point. I think I still kind of lived in my values a little bit, but it was a dance. I mean, it was, I was just trying to negotiate. It wasn't easy. It's
Yeah.
much easier to live this life without all the acrobatics when you just are completely have access to your true authentic self. And
Yes.
that's what I think, that's what I was trying to say earlier is I just now have access to my true authentic self. It frees up brain space to thrive
Exactly.
in all areas of my life and do big things when I'm not distracted constantly by these obsessive food thoughts. For example, starting a podcast with my BFF, Jamie, and recovery, our real food recovery online support group that is just thriving. Reading, I like reading now that I didn't before, spending time with grandkids. But I want to ask you the question back of, what do you do to live your authentic self in a way so that you are living in accordance with your values? What's your answer to that?
I really have to look at how I structure my life, where I am, how I structure my day is what it comes down to. It's the days make up the life. So I structure my days in a very specific way that give me a lot of ability to do all the things that I need to do, all the things that I want to do. And I really prioritize my the way I schedule my day and the way I prioritize my day.
Mhm.
That is prioritize the components of my day. So
Mhm.
when I look at, am I aligned to my values, I look at how have I met the priorities I set for myself today.
That is a great topic, because in real food recovery, we have these cornerstones, foundational pillars. And, I was talking for me, I just have to get the food clean. That's number one for me. But we have these other foundational components that my sleep has to be in order, my movement, my spirituality, and again, the food that we talked about. Those are the four foundational cornerstones of what we have built our recovery program on. And we feel strongly that when you are addressing those areas of your life, you do have a much easier access to your value system and to be congruent with who you authentically are.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Okay. Great discussion. I love
Mm.
this is always a big topic about values. We've got a few listener questions, and let's
Yes.
just go ahead and jump into that. The first one is, are there certain values you must have in your life to feel fulfilled? For me, it's honestly relationships, work ethics, spirituality, and honoring my body. But I'm sure it's different for everyone, but those
Yeah.
are my non-negotiables. Do
Yeah.
you want to add anything onto that?
Uh, no, I think that, as long as our branches of recovery that we have created, really, as long I look at those every day and I ask myself how I'm aligning to them, and when I'm not aligning to it, to those four fundamental branches of food and movement and spirituality and sleep, I know it. I know.
Mhm.
No, second viewer question. How do you learn your values? Who's supposed to help you figure out what you value?
Good
So
question.
that's a good question. I would say there are lots of value exercises out there. They're
Mhm.
found in personal development workshops, or certainly many articles online. You can find personal values lists of words that people can adopt and vet out as their personal values. And we just conducted a personal values workshop back in November, here in our real food recovery community. We make our monthly workshops, call them branching out workshops. We make them open to the public, and we have folks come in and really start to uh suss out their values and figure out what really resonates with them. And it was a really wonderful experience. A
Mhm.
really wonderful
I
experience.
loved it.
We watched folks learn things about themselves that they had never known. And
Mm.
these were people in their, well into their adulthood,
Mm.
almost heading towards their next chapter of retirement. And these folks were like, wow, I never knew this about me. I never knew that I had these values or that I wanted to align to them. And it was,
Mhm.
um, it's not one person that's supposed to help you figure out what you value, but it's what those, when you think of those words, do they resonate with you emotionally? And if the
Mhm.
answer is yes, you're probably onto something. Like, it really resonates deeply with me, that when I think about, I have integrity and my word is really important. So if I give my word to someone, I need to execute on it.
Yeah. Beautiful. The next one is, I want to be honorable in my values, but sometimes it's hard to live up to my value system and I feel guilty. How do I deal with the shame?
Mm.
So first of all, we agree it's hard. We do not discount that whatsoever. And life can present real challenges that can make it difficult to do the right thing.
Yes.
Like anything, this is a skill set or a practice. It requires practice. And you may experience that feeling of ick when we are not proud of our actions. And hopefully we find that actually motivating moving forward to stick closely to our values, regardless of consequences. I had something happen today where I learned of a story of a family member with someone who worked for them, made a very, very poor choice, so much so that they ended up losing their job. And this person was absolutely distraught, like crying on the fetal position on the floor. Very upsetting. And the what my family member was able to kind of do is what my philosophy is you can make this the worst thing that ever happened to you, or you can make it the best thing
Right.
that ever happened
Exactly.
to you. Because the consequences, I mean, it had already happened. It was
Exactly.
poor decision by a young person, that there are just real consequences that come with a hard life lesson. Your heart's
Yeah.
breaking for this person
Yeah.
because you can see they have genuine remorse, but that genuine remorse does not remove the consequences.
No.
So yeah, just learning and growing.
Yeah. Agreed. That's yeah. Well, it's important. And you know what? That young person might look back on this experience in 10, 20 years and think, you know what? This is
In
where
my
I
life.
picked it and learned a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think, last viewer question for the day, do you think values and self-esteem are the same thing? I think that values empower our self-esteem. Values are maybe the coal in the engine of self-esteem. I think that we derive self-esteem from aligning to our values. Because self-esteem is something that comes from within, it's intrinsic. It's not given to us. It is something that we have to manufacture ourselves. And when our internal family or those parts inside see the choices we make consistently aligning to our values, our self-esteem increases.
Yeah. Beautiful. Very, very well said. This has been a great episode. I'm so glad that we did this
Me
today. And
too.
yeah, if you want to know more about what we do at Real Food Recovery, visit us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4, the letter U. So realfoodrecovery4u.com. And we would love to see you there. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.